Then I installed an anger room where there were different ways of expressing suppressed anger. In traditional Chinese medicine, there is the belief that if there's emotions that don't find expression in their normal day-to-day life, that they get stored in the organs, and anger, frustration, hate, self-hate is kind of suppressed in the organ of the liver and causes a lot of havoc. And it's especially interesting because the US has a lot of increase in liver diseases, and so it's a little bit of my mission to like put that on people's radars. So I just made a room where safely suppressed anger can be expressed with a qigong exercise that I posted on the wall, and just kind of where you could speak into these old school telephones made out of cans and strings that were tied up to a tree that usually is known in traditional Chinese medicine to like transform energy for humans, and also for just between people, you know, somebody talking on one end, the other people listening, just to be witnessed in their expression of their emotions, and also to just physically hammering a club onto a piece of wood, or throw cans around or a ball in this small bunker room. And then I had a just kind of a typewriter installation with a paper loop, a never-ending paper loop, inviting people to reflect on their past life memories. And people took it up, and other people wrote something else and typed it on the typewriter. There was, yes.
I typed on there.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
I appreciated the typewriter. Have you done that before this weekend? Similar with the typewriter in another space or location?
No, the typewriter, like this idea I have like since over a decade, and I never kind of installed it somewhere, so that was really cool that happened here.
And just the tactile experience of like pressing the typewriter keys and like the paper, and then you gotta like move things when the line is finished, and you gotta like roll the paper. You know, it's like whoa.
Yeah, and just remembering how hard it is to actually spell right the first time, right? So that you can't correct it on the computer, like on the computer. Yeah, it's really funny.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too. It was really cool. And then on Saturday, I performed under my name qualia-c, which is like my one-woman band that I'm trying to get started. I, don't really play an instrument, but I did a lot of digital music, like a album full of music, but I. Working on a new song, but it's not finished, so I just brought the movement that will be like the music video eventually for that, which was called Tale of a Night. And it was a stretch fabric costume that was really long, stretching across the stage on the battery, attached to the ladder, and at the end they were just like some shorts, and my whole body was like in the tube and only my legs were out, and there was improvisational movement from Johnny and Rosie, and so I was moving with the stretchy tube and then slowly going to the ladder and then coming out of the tube, and then I had a full black bodysuit where I attached tentacles, also black with like balls at the very end that were heavier. They came out of the head and the liver, again, for suppressed anger. And so I started to like hammer the balls onto the ground or onto the wall, bouncing back onto me. In traditional Chinese medicine, the belief is, like that anger and frustration and hate, self-hate always like bounces back, right? So like forgiveness for yourself and others is actually needed to like resolve the stagnation emotionally. And so... yeah, anyway, but
could I ask you when you're performing in front of an audience, is that therapeutic?
Yeah.
And what else? Yeah, what else is that like when you experience that performing in front of an audience?
Yeah, it's very vulnerable because it's my own shit basically. I'm dealing with it. I started with healing work through medical qigong, and a lot of the suppressed stuff comes up also from past lives, and so I'm just using art to express that and hopefully get people in their subconscious to like recognize what slumbers in their somatic self and energetic self. And and it was really successful. I was very nervous, because I'd never performed it here, and it's very vulnerable, because it's just like, it's crazy shit, it's like shadow work, it's like completely crazy, because I whipped out a sword and like tried to catch the balls and cut them off and didn't succeed, and then at the end I walked down the stairs and buried the sword in the soil. And it's very vulnerable because it's so out there, but it resonated with a lot of people. A lot of people said that they were watering up and just had different associations, not necessarily mine, dealing with a past life, but like just kind of this frustration, anger, and like this hitting the wall with like your own energy, not getting where you want to be, and like this restriction of the fabric, trying to get away but can't, and then kind of having to resolve actually going to the source of the so it's like, it's really, really therapeutic in that sense that I have to overcome my own fear, be that vulnerable, and like once you create art from that vulnerable heart place, it really translates to people. And it's always very rewarding, but I always like nearly, get like, whoa! Yeah.
It's like a natural high.
It is, and it's nerve-wracking before you start, like until you find your flow in the performance and start not to care what people actually think,
When's the last time you performed in front of an audience? Previously? Yeah,
I'm a Pilates and fascial movement somatic educator, but half of my time I'm actually an active artist performing for 2 different dance companies in the Bay, Kinetic Arts and Moving Ground. And my last performance, when was that? We had more like a discussion up in Point Reyes, kind of panel discussion, discussing our nature body and how we can kind of return to that. And actual real-time performance was last year, October. It was a site-specific performance with Kinetic Arts that dealt and grappled with the advances of AI. And so I was like this AI robot on the loose in a big warehouse in Fruitvale.
Can you speak about using like existing locations that maybe they're I don't know the word, they're abandoned, they're not in use, or left alone, nature grows around them. Can you talk about wanting to like inhabit the space but respect the space if it's in nature? I'm a very big fan of site-specific pieces, because it, for one, gets rid of kind of the fourth wall, and the location is very, half of the experience of the artwork. What I forgot that I brought here is from Moving Ground, the network project that tries to learn from trees, and their communication with the mycelium in the forest network. Like, what can we learn from these
networks for our own human societies, for the future and human survival in this climate crisis that we're facing. And I did an ancestor spiral sewn out of jeans.
I sat on that. It was nice.
Yeah. And there in particular, like this piece was up on the hill, marked kind of a very beautiful spot where you had like 180 view from Oakland all the way over to Tiburon, Golden Gate Bridge right in the middle. And this Angel Island is very loaded with history of Chinese immigration, ancestry, history of the Native Americans that lived here in the Bay, and bringing denim to this spot, that was capitalist product coming out of the gold rush in San Francisco is very deep to me, and kind of bringing that also as a resting place, because in capitalism the only thing that you don't do is rest, right? And so it's for me, just a piece of bringing community together, but also to remember. And like the land and the place, the site-specific site, is very important because it's half of the message, if not all the message, right? Because if you put that spiral somewhere else on a parking lot, it's not the same as on like an island. Yeah. The same with the sculptures, they're grappling with ancestral stress and trauma that lives in our bodies today, suppressed or not, if you know about it. And if they're in a site of a battery that was, meant in the Second World War to defend the front lines of this country, then you have that message right there. It's about war. It's about how humans think that their nature is constructed. But for me, it's really just human behavior that can be changed. Like, I think if somebody says, war and violence is human nature, it's just kind of a cop-out not to do the healing work that's needed to get rid of the ancestral stress and trauma. Once you get rid of that, like the humans can be whatever they want to be. They don't have to be like these crude, land-stealing, alpha, whatever, Yeah.
Can you talk about like maybe your childhood, the arts or music? What was that? Do you remember as a kid?
Yeah.
Were there similar, like this weekend, were there similar things that you experienced as a kid where you're like, ooh, I kind of like this artist or this music show?
So I started, painting as a kid a lot. I grew up in Germany, second generation of the Second World War. Always kind of really felt, not only kind of, I felt guilty about what happened in Nazi Germany. And, found out that other teenagers don't feel guilty about it. And then I got really curious about, like, why is that? And then with some research, I found out that it's really like, if there is culprits of crime in your family, like, you feel that guilt, and if not, then not, right? And so I got really into researching all of that and trying to like wrap up that topic in my family, which was very difficult because they were all very defensive and wanted to forget about it. But I dug up the Nazi court file from my grandfather and all of that. It's a crazy story anyway. And so that was always really big part of my my quest, and trying to resolve that. As a teenager, I was a part of like a group of friends who were very ecologically active, and went to do already kind of underground art gatherings in construction sites, of like, there was like this big bank that they built, and we did like an art project in there, like snuck in at night, and just kind of go to the vault and like did art in the vault. Or sometimes it was like underground water tunnels that we like did performances for each other at. So we basically, created the art that we wanted in our small town because there was nothing like that offered. Inspired, it might be like weird, but like definitely, a lot of like the expressionist art that came out of the Second World War or before the Weimar Republic, like all of that art was very inspiring to me, as well as like the counterculture, beat culture, and definitely counterculture as well, and MTV. I definitely remember
the old school MTV.
Yeah, old school MTV
before reality MTV.
Yeah, I mean, it might sound pathetic, but like I remember as a kid, first time seeing. It might really be funny, but like it was Culture Club. Just seeing his kind of cross-gender appearance on this Mississippi ship was a very crucial moment for me. It was like, oh, there's another world beyond this what I'm sitting in. And also seeing, Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails, Head Like a Hole. Like those two videos are like engraved in my brain from back in the day.
What is I only have like 3 minutes left.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Could you quickly talk about Germany today and like are there similar, what we experienced this weekend here, are there similar things in Germany these days? Or in Berlin maybe, is my guess.
Yeah, well, like I don't know the latest just because I live here since 2006 in the States, in different parts of the States. But I lived in Berlin 1996 to 1998. And it was the very tail end of the wall coming down, and there were like a lot of occupied buildings by anarchy groups and also artists, and I was loosely part of that culture of the squatters that were artists. There were different houses, some were more like theater, the other were like music, more philosophy. It was like distributed, and there was a lot of like things like that going on, but more in the houses. They were like amazing. It's called Volkü, which means Volksküche, which means kitchen for the people, where very cheap food was cooked for each other, and there were like massive roof parties and bunker parties and concerts and theater pieces, dance performances. There was like one house called Kuhle, which Kunst and Leben, which is art and life, and they got through that they could renovate their facade and keep the bullet holes from the Second World War. All the other houses were like painted nicely, but this one stayed, and they did like a huge scaffolding performance on it. Anyway, yeah, there's like lots of stuff, and I'm sure it's still going on. And I know like the rave culture was really, really big. I was never really part of that in Germany, but yeah, I'm sure it's going on.
With about a minute left, is there anything else you want to say?
I think it's very important for people to come together and share this group effort to make things like that happen. I definitely, gathered a lot of frustration trying to get art grants to survive as an artist, which I for 2 years did and like didn't get a grant. And so it was very, very rewarding to find this group of people where I can just like freely express and share and really drive the arts in whatever direction. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but like expression of emotions is very important, and I love these people. They make shit happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.